the blue and res stray-headed vice. Why?
With
Why?
yellow roses.
Good morning. Welcome. I'm John Solo, and you are not. Today is another work-in-progress video brought to you by the letter I Can't Speak. It's too early in the morning for this. This is Broken Warrior, and I forget the series name here. It's written by Casey Wells and Parker Williams. Let's get the series name up here so we can figure this shiat out. Let's see here. Graphics. It is the Crossbow Protection, Book 1. Crossbow. You can tell how this is going to go already. Anyways, this thing is wonderful. It's the story of an ex-military man who has started a protection service. His name is Gary Cross, and he's kind of cross. I hope you all love this. There's plenty of tropes going on here. I'll let you figure that out for yourself. But this is one of the first scenes with the two main characters together. Love y'all. Peace.
Stuffed with yellow roses sat on his desk.
What the fuck? He walked toward them slowly, placing his backpack on a chair without once taking his eyes off the beautiful flowers that stood out against the blue and res stray-headed vice. Why?
Stuffed with yellow roses sat on his desk.
What the fuck? He walked toward them slowly, placing his backpack on a chair without once taking his eyes off the beautiful flowers that stood out against the blue and red striated vase. Do you like them? Michael spun around. Mr. Cross stood behind him at the door. He gestured to the roses. I had to ask the saleslady what flowers were best to signify friendship, and she said these. I hope she was right. She was. Michael managed to croak. He cleared his throat. They're so pretty. No one had ever bought him flowers. Mr. Cross smiled. I'm glad you like them. I also have a cup of coffee waiting for you. It's from that shop you go to. When have I ever seen him smile? Then his words hit home. He knows where I get my coffee? You have a cup in your recycle bin every morning. I went in this morning and asked for a cup of what you usually drink. The woman at the counter brightened and said she'd be happy to do that. Mr. Cross scuffed the carpet with his shoe. Look, I know I told you last night how much I really do appreciate you, but I wanted you to know they weren't just words, because they can never show you how sorry I am for my behavior. So I promise I will try to have my deeds speak for me instead. He raised his chin to look Michael in the eye. If you're willing to give me another chance, that is. The icy annoyance that had gripped Michael's heart for nearly a year cracked. Yes, I think we can do that. Mr. Cross expelled a breath. I promise to treat you as a person. I will do my best to control my anger and annoyance. Another forthright stare. I hope you realize none of it was ever about you. He pushed out a sigh. I guess you could say I'm mostly angry with myself. Michael figured he knew the reason for that, but there was no way he was going to ask why. If Mr. Cross was coming to trust him, then he'd let his boss tell him when the time was right. Maybe I could have been less prickly, he shrugged. Or not. It's a tough call. That earned him a chuckle. No, you were right, and I appreciate you having the guts to tell me to my face. He's a big CO2 guy. You were right, and I appreciate you having the guts to tell me to my face. Mr. Cross straightened. Now, if you're ready to have lung cookies, You were right, and I appreciate you having the guts to tell me to my face. Mr. Cross straightened. Now, if you're ready to do some work, step in here and drink your coffee. His eyes glittered. I've got a task for you, if you feel up for it. To it.
To it?
Lung cookies. They're what happens when you're an old man and a narrator. Work, step in here and drink your coffee. His eyes glittered. I've got a task for you, if you feel up to it. For a moment, Michael was shocked into stillness. Mr. Cross never asked him for anything beyond the basics of his job. A cup of coffee waiting when he came in, answering the phones, and doing the filing. He wasn't so much an assistant as a glorified secretary. He said he'll change, remember? Michael. He jumped. Oh, sorry, yes, absolutely, I'll be right in. Just let me make sure all calls will be answered first. Mr. Cross smirked. Don't be too long, your coffee will go cold. Michael wasn't about to tell him he'd drink coffee any way it came. When he stepped through the doorway into Mr. Cross's office, his boss was his boss. Yeah, they're not pleasant. Popcorn long. Michael wasn't about to tell him he'd drink coffee any way it came. When he stepped through the doorway into Mr. Cross's office, his boss was bent over something, muttering about how unfucking believable it was. He glanced up. Sorry, I was checking out the file you've got opened for the Macklison request. Macklison. That's a name. About how unfucking believable it was. He glanced up. Sorry, I was checking out the file you've got open for the Macklison request. This man wants us to pimp out one of our agents, and he's chosen Dixon Meeks for the website. Sorry, I was checking out the file you've got open for the Macklison request. This man wants us to pimp out one of our agents, and he's chosen Dixon Meeks from the website. He sent me a mail and said Dix meets his criteria of good-looking with muscles. He wants to know how much it costs to procure his services. It's like we're a fucking meat market or something. Tell him... Mr. Cross's eyes gleamed. No, never mind. I'll handle this one. He shoved the pad he had been working on aside and gave his full attention to Michael. For almost a year, Michael had been trying to get his boss to pull his head out of his ass and see him as more than a fixture at the desk. Now, he squirmed as Mr. Cross's gaze pinned him like a butterfly mounted on styrofoam. What was it you needed? I've got a meeting this morning that... Michael did a mental run-through of Mr. Cross's schedule and frowned. Oh, but there isn't anything in the diary apart from Dr. Malone. He says he'll see you. This is a more personal meeting. Would you like me to reschedule Dr. Malone? Michael asked. Not that he thought Dr. Malone would even notice such a change. Mr. Cross picked up a pen from the desk and tapped it on the surface. No, I want you to go ahead and talk with Wheels. Michael had to force himself not to slump against the desk. Me? He cleared his throat, hoping to get rid of that damned squeak. Me? We're men now. Me? He cleared his throat, hoping to get rid of that damned squeak. Me? Mr. Cross grinned, leaned forward, and speared Michael with a stare. You. He stood up and walked to the window. It occurs to me that while you've been my assistant for some time now, you've never had the chance to actually do the job of one. So I'm going to let you go ahead and talk to Wheels. You're not serious. Mr. Cross turned back around, his eyebrows arched. Have you ever known me not to be... serious? Mr. Cross turned back around, his eyebrows arched. Have you ever known me not to be? Not that Michael could recall. From everything he'd seen, Mr. Cross definitely wasn't one for joking around. But what am I supposed to say to him? Mr. Cross shrugged. You're my assistant, so I trust you to take care of it. You've got carte blanche to handle whatever he wants, however you see fit.
Stop. Carte blanche.
I thought it was blanc. Shrugged. You're my assistant, so I trust you to take care of it. You've got gas? Shrugged. You're my assistant, so I trust you to take care of it. You've got carte blanche to handle whatever he wants, however you see fit. His mind reeling, Michael stumbled forward and dropped into the seat across from where Mr. Cross sat. He knew it was a breach of protocol, but right then, fuck protocol. Are you okay? Mr. Cross's tone held amusement. He sat back down with his own voice. He knew it was a breach of protocol, but right then, fuck protocol. Are you okay? Mr. Cross's tone held amusement. He sat back down. Michael's palms were suddenly damp. Then he saw the cup of coffee and grabbed it. Maybe caffeine would help. He took a long drink, relishing its aroma and flavor, then he set the cup down. Yes, I'm okay, but why now? Why me? And I don't have any meetings scheduled for you, so I'm a little flustered over that. Mr. Cross picked up the bottle of aspirin Michael had placed on the corner of the desk. He opened it and dropped 4 tablets into his hand. He popped the pills into his mouth, tilted his head back, and swallowed. His face scrunched up, and he shook his head before he met Michael's gaze again. Okay, fine, I don't have a meeting. It's just... Mr. Cross sighed. I've treated you like crap. Michael raised his hand, but he plowed on. And don't say I haven't, because I know it's true. Morning, Emma. He plowed on. And don't say I haven't, because I know it's true. A little of Michael's habitual calm returned. He chuckled. Okay. I wasn't going to say you haven't. I was just going to say how surprised I was that you acknowledged it. Mr. Cross's cheeks flushed. I guess I earned that. And if you don't want to do this, I'll understand. But before you answer, you should know I'm going to work you like a dog until you quit. All those things I should have had you doing before, you'll be handling them now. His eyes glinted. Do you think you're up to the task? A band of iron encircled Michael's chest, threatening to cut off his breathing. He hadn't been kidding about his educational background, but he hadn't been completely honest about waiting for another job to open up. He'd had offers, sure, and some of them would have paid him a lot more than he was making in his current position. From the moment he'd walked into Crossbow, however, he'd fallen for the place. He could see himself there permanently. Maybe not as someone's assistant, no matter how well he got paid, but as something. He looked Mr. Cross in the eye. Yes, I can do that. Excellent. Okay, the thing you need to remember about Wheels, you have to keep him focused. At any given time, he's got like 100 tabs open in his brain. He's forever bouncing from one thing to another. Michael swallowed. Can I really do this? He'd never even met Dr. Malone and had no way of knowing if he'd accept Mr. Cross had given Michael the latitude to handle whatever it was he wanted to talk about. Would you be more comfortable if I went with you? The fact that Mr. Cross had asked brought a smile. A flush of pride went through him. He trusts me with this. No, I think I can do this. With this. No, I think I can do this. I think you can too. With this. No, I think I can do this. I think you can too. Mr. Cross cocked his head to one side. About yesterday. Why did you pick that day to go off on me? He arched his eyebrows. And what made you think I wouldn't fire you for it? His grin told Michael Mr. Cross was amused, not angry. Michael was also well aware of the impossibility of keeping his mouth shut, no matter how hard he tried. Since I started working here, I can count the number of times you've spoken with me on one finger, and I don't count being barked at. To be honest, I got sick of being treated like... Michael fluttered his hand, trying to think of the best word to fit. Mr. Cross frowned. Shit. Michael gave a sharp nod. Exactly. I was ready to walk out the door because I'd gotten so tired of seeing you snap at people every day. I don't understand how you even have employees." Mr. Cross leaned back in his seat, swept a hand over his dark hair, and sighed. "Am I really that bad?" Then he fired Michael a glance. "It's okay. You can answer that truthfully." His lips twitched. "I already got you roses, and they don't give refunds." Michael had to smile at that. He huffed out a breath. "Look, I know this job is everything to you, and I get that you want things to go perfectly, but if you had a better disposition, maybe people could stop walking around like they're afraid of stepping on a landmine." "That seems to be a pretty apt description." Mr. Cross's gaze dropped to his hands resting on the desk. "If it helps, I am sorry." "You've already said that. With flowers, I might add." Michael still hadn't gotten over the sweet gesture. "Even so, I shouldn't be taking my problem." "Flowers, I might add." Michael still hadn't gotten over the sweet gesture. "Even so, I shouldn't be taking my problems out on the people who work for me." "No, you shouldn't." When Mr. Cross laughed, that iron band around Michael's chest finally eased a little. "You really don't have a..." Laughed, that iron band around Michael's chest finally eased a little. "You really don't have a problem taking me to task, do you?" "None whatsoever." Michael stood, walked behind his chair, and placed his hands on the back of it. "I've learned that there are several types of people who should expect to get walked on in their jobs." He held up his hand and ticked them off as he spoke. "People of different ethnicities. People of different ethnicities in their jobs." He held up his hand and ticked them off as he spoke. "People of different ethnicities, women, LGBT people, well, pretty much who... Different ethnicities, women, LGBT people, well, pretty much anyone who isn't white and straight." Mr. Cross's gaze narrowed until wrinkles showed on his forehead. "I never..." Michael held up his hand. "No, you didn't. That much I can say. You were an equal opportunity asshole." Michael sucked in a breath. He hadn't intended to say that out loud, but oh, the hell with it. When I was in school, I found out that because I was gay, it seemed to be okay to treat me with less respect than other people. Worse, it felt like it was not only sanctioned, but that the problem lay with me. I'd get bullied in class, and the teachers would basically say I needed to man up. I got everything of being... Get bullied in class, and the teachers would basically say I needed to man up. I got tired of being treated like that, so I started standing up for myself. Admittedly, it garnered me more than a few bruises, but I'd like to think it also earned me some respect. For myself, if nothing else. I won't be talked down to by anyone." He tilted his head toward Mr. Cross. "Not even my boss." Mr. Cross grumbled something under his breath. "I think you've got a meeting to get to." "You're regretting the roses now, aren't you?" Mr. Cross blinked, then gave a half smile. "Nope, not for one damn second." Michael turned and strode toward the door. Just before he opened it, he turned around. "For what it's worth, you have your good points, too." Mr. Cross's eyebrows arched once more, and he leaned forward, his gaze locked on Michael's. "For what it's worth, you have your good points, too." Mr. Cross's eyebrows arched once more, and he leaned forward, his gaze locked on Michael. "Oh? Would I be out of line asking what they might be?" Michael smiled, hoping his boss would understand the truth behind his next words. "You're fiercely loyal to your employees. Even though you're a jerk to them most of the time, you're the only one allowed to act that way. You're quick to jump to their defense, and that right there is what kept me here all these months." Without waiting for a reply, Michael opened the door, stepped out into his office, and breathed a sigh of relief.